always think in terms of every time the calendar changes, we think in terms of New Year and things are new. And I wanted to talk about God's new thing. And in this chapter, he talks about it, and it's a good verse. Got lots of good application. And, we think about things being new, and as I said, New Year. But let's think about it from God's point of view for a moment. And here he is sharing his thoughts with us through the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah is a beautiful book to read. Lots of wonderful verses here. And here in Isaiah chapter 43, I want to begin reading verse 18. Isaiah 43, verse 18. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Now, first of all, let's agree that in verse 18 when he says, remember ye not the former things, nor consider the things of old. And then he says in verse 19, I will do a new thing. Let's agree that this is just good practical advice for life. We could look at this in an application way and just apply it to our lives. And that's good practical advice. Just forget about the former things, and every day is a new day in kind of a philosophical sense. That's really true. And I heard a person say one time that I thought was really good, that the Christian life cannot be lived looking backwards. God's not looking backwards, and here he says that, and he doesn't want us looking backwards, and that can really cripple us in life when we're looking back all the time and ruminating on things in the past, because God's in the present tense. No matter where we are, there he is. That's what he told Moses in the burning bush, I am that I am, speaking in the present tense. And no matter where we find ourselves, no matter what we do, he's always I am that I am, and he's present tense. And not only that, but he's the God that knows the future, and he makes a good future for us. There's a lot of good verses to talk about that. And although we can apply these verses personally to ourselves, and we could use our imagination and wonder, wow, when he says verse 19, our imaginations could just run wild. That, behold, I will do a new thing. Wow, I wonder what it'll be. Maybe he's going to rain down $1 bills from heaven. I was with Paul yesterday at the Sonic, and we thought that for a minute, because he found a $1 bill blowing through the parking lot. And Paul, you can always tell who's a real Christian, because Paul jumped out of his car and got that $1 bill. He took it over and gave it to one of those kids, the waiters there. And I thought, only a Christian would do that. I won't tell you what our further discussion was. We both agreed that if it had been a 20, we had to talk about it a little bit. but then another little piece of paper blew, and Paul said, "Wait, is that another one?" But it wasn't really. But we can use our imagination. Think, what is this new thing that God's going to do? And we imagine all kinds of wild and extravagant things. But really, if we'll read in this passage and read, like, for instance, I'm going to just in a moment here turn back to the previous chapter, we can find out what God had in mind when he said to the prophet Isaiah what his new thing was. And it's not something, although beneficial to us, but trivial really in the big picture. It's not something shallow, trivial. God goes right for the heart of things. Go back to chapter 42 for a moment, and I want you to notice this language of new and a new thing, and how it works in, how he explains it. And here we'll see by the context what he has in mind. Isaiah 42 now, the chapter right before, and I'm going to begin with the first verse. Behold my servant, whom I uphold, mine elect, whom my soul delighteth, in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard. A bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. Now we know from this passage, if you've read the New Testament, we know who this is talking about, don't we? Matthew quotes this very passage in talking about Jesus. And this is a prophecy about Jesus, quoted by Matthew. And I don't want to pass over this without mentioning it to you. In verse 1 it said, he shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. And here in verse 3 where we stopped, he will bring forth judgment unto truth. Usually when we read this word judgment, we get all scared and we worry, and that seems like a bad word to us, because all we think of when we read the word judgment is God's up here and he's the judge and he's looking at us and I saw you when you did that, and we're being judged. But that's really not what this is talking about. Not all judgment is bad. In other words, if you had a civil case and someone had been abusing you and doing things to you, and you finally came to court against the person who had been causing you all kinds of trouble, and then the judge ruled in your favor, that's a judgment that's good, you see. And that's what he's talking about here. This word could be translated justice, or righteousness. He's going to bring forth, Jesus comes into the earth to bring forth righteousness or justice, or we could say it this way, a judgment in our favor against the person who had been our enemy, which is the devil. And Jesus, when you think about his earthly ministry, that's exactly what he did. He went around bringing judgment against Satan into the world. Justice for us, delivering us. And if you go on reading, look at what he says here. By the way, in verse 3, I think that's beautiful. A bruised reed he shall not break. That's not talking about sticks growing in the grass out here. It's talking about people. It's a metaphoric language talking about human beings. People who are bruised, he's going to treat us gently. Those who have been roughed up and bruised in life, he will not break. A smoking flax he shall not quench. That means the fire is about to go out. People having difficulty. He's there to help, not to make it worse, in other words. Go on reading in verse 4. He shall not fail or be discouraged till he hath set judgment in the earth. Again, think about what I just said. Justice or righteousness. And the isles shall wait for his law. When it says, by the way, the isles or the islands, that's talking about the far... when it talks about the islands, it means faraway peoples. Meaning us, by the way. We are those faraway peoples who are waiting for his law. And if you've read in the Gospels, you know what his law is. He said, a new commandment I give you, that you shall love one another. Everyone in the world is waiting for him to come and bring forth justice and righteousness, and for what he would bring forth his law of love. Verse 5, thus saith God, the Lord, he that created the heavens and stretched them out, he that spread forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people upon it, and spirit to them that walk therein. I, the Lord, hath called thee in righteousness, and will uphold thine hand, and will keep thee. This is God, by the way, speaking unto his servant, unto Christ. This is God, in a prophetic sense, speaking to Jesus. And he says, let me begin again, verse 6. I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness. I will hold thine hand. I will keep thee. I will give thee for a covenant of the people. Think about that for a minute. I will give you, Jesus, as a covenant for the people. Jesus is our covenant with God now. For a light to the Gentiles. That's us, by the way. A light for us who sat in darkness. Hi there. Hey, nice to see you. To open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from the prison, and them that sat in darkness out of the prison house. Now we know for sure who this is talking about. Jesus himself quoted verses like this. And he did this. He opened blind eyes. And he brought people out of the spiritual prisons that they were in. And those that sat in darkness. Darkness, whenever it talks about people sitting in darkness, it always means separated from God. The people who were the outsiders, who were left on the outside, who had no access to God. He gave everybody access. He brought the people outside and brought them inside. These are beautiful verses talking about Jesus and in his ministry and all the things that he did. Verse 8, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Verse 9, behold the former things. Now this now begins to remind me of what we just read. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Now from the context here, we can sort of see what he's talking about when he says, I'm going to do something new, and the former things, they've all come to pass, but now I've got something new. You can just sort of sense as you read this, God's kind of excited about it. You've seen what's been before, but now I've got something new. And what is it? Well, he's just been describing it. It's his servant. It's Jesus coming to bring forth righteousness into the earth, to let all the prisoners go free, to open all the blind eyes, to bring deliverance to everyone. And then he says in response in verse 10, beautiful verse here, sing unto the Lord a new song. Why a new song? Well, because he's doing a new thing. The new thing, by the way, again, is Jesus. He comes to bring a new situation, a new relationship, a new way to relate to God. When Jesus, we read this last week in Matthew chapter 11, he said that nobody can know the Father except through the Son. You see, nobody in the Old Testament knew him as Father. He was Jehovah God, but now Jesus brings a new relationship with God, a new way of relating to God.